Hey, it's Nate, Uplifting us. If you're new here, welcome. If you're a returning subscriber, hey, Uplifters. So let's talk about polygamy. And specifically, I want to talk about FLDS and Warren Jeff and all the horrible things that he did. Speak on a few things. Polygamy is the practice or custom of having more than one wife or husband at the same time. This is not all polygamy groups. I'm talking about Warren Jeff and his pretty much cult. So children were sexually abused behind the pretense of religious ideology. So I watched the Netflix documentary called Keep Sweet, Pray, and Obey. And while watching that, I realized that a lot of people were manipulated, brainwashed, and threatened to stay a part of the organization or church, or they were simply let go because they didn't want to follow the rules, or be a part of it anymore. And my whole focus of doing this awareness video, is to shed light on how children were raped, pretty much married at an age, to grown men that married, seeked out girls, babies. I mean, you have more than one wife or more than one husband. When I first started watching, when it first came on, it's speaking of Roland Jeff, which was Warren Jeff's father, and he had over 20 wives. And of course, some of those wives were underage. And then it got worse when Roland died and Warren Jeff, and it became more of control, power, money, marrying underage girls, and even kicking the boys out of the church to make sure that the older men had young girls to marry. That's how I took it. Like, that's why they got rid of the boys, was to make sure that all the girls were occupied or was married to these older men. And it's sickening to think about that, but this is some of the things that can happen and that do happen in this world. So I want to read a little bit of Keep Sweet, Pray, and Obey. Okay, so the title of the series is derived from the motto, Keep Sweet, Pray, and Obey, coined by the preceding president, Roland Jeffs, and used to convey how women should behave in relation to their husband. So it was pretty much a form of power. Having power and having control over these either women or little girls. The mantra was frequently sung aloud and meant to be in control of your emotions, and you didn't display things like anger or resentment or frustration. The latter part of the motto, Pray and Obey, is shown to adorn the chimney of the house belonging to Warren Jeff. Read this whole section because it's very informative. Several former FLDS members or survivors are interviewed by Dredson on both their experiences inside the church, as well providing testimony to Jeff's systematic course and exercises of power toward the members of the congregation. Rebecca Muzzer, a former wife of Roland, appears in each of the episodes, as does her sister Alyssa Wall. People outside of the church, either related to the events transpiring following the church's move from Salt Lake City to Short Creek, the move of headquarters from Short Creek to the Yearning for Zion Ranch, or for their previous work covering the FLDS, were also interviewed. These people included both the investigative journalists like Watkins, who has previously done several reports on the church, private investigator Sam Brower, who has investigated the church for several years, and attorney Roger Who. And as I was watching it really was sad, because a lot like I said, a lot of the members of this church were born into this. And a lot of people were blind. They were blind. They didn't know any outside world. They only knew their church, their members. They only knew those people, and they really couldn't decipher what was right and what was wrong. So they thought that this was normal. This was their normal. And I was watching one woman talk about her story and how she was to marry her cousin. And she even went to Warren Jeffs and asked him, like, you know, this I don't want to be married to anyone that's older than me, like a man. I don't want to be married to a man, but let alone like my cousin. And pretty much it was like he didn't hear it. He didn't want to hear it. And he married this young lady, the lady, well, at the time, the little girl and her grown cousin. And of course, it was rape involved. It was other abuse involved. And this went on throughout mostly every house of this church. So I'm going to read this part as well. According to Dretson herself, the focus is not only the experience of being in that cult, but instead it's on the people, particularly the women who managed to defy it and escape it, which, if you know anything about the FLDS, is a pretty miraculous and incredible thing to do. So it was a big thing for people to actually pretty much escape this cult. It was either a hard thing to do. They were shunned. They couldn't talk to their families. And of course, like, people knew, like, if you were a minor girl and somebody wanted to marry you, it was just like the parents had no say so. They had to sit with their mouths closed and watch their daughter be married to a grown man. And some maybe didn't mind because that's all they knew. They were brainwashed to think that it's okay, it's normal. But some did. I remember watching a part where the man was like talking to a friend, and he was like, so what are you going to do when Jeff decides to marry your daughter or whatever? And he was like, Jeff is not marrying my daughter until I don't want my daughter to get married until she's 18 years old. And the man must went back and told Warren Jeffs what the other man said, and he was kicked out. He was shunned. His family ended up going to another man and his wives, and he got kicked out of the community. That's how sickening it was. It was all about power, control, money, selling. It was so much behind what he did, and some people are still a part of it. That's the bad thing. Some people still believe that he is Jesus. Some people just say that he is in jail for nothing, and he shouldn't be in jail, and they still praise and worship him. So thankful that people actually stood up and fought until they couldn't fight anymore to get him behind bars. It was a hard thing to do. He ran. He had other people sending him money. He had it was so crazy how he had the members of his congregation do all of his somewhat dirty work while he was living a free life with his wives, or a few of his wives. It was sickening. I want to touch on the fact that, as I want to say, church he had, which was Burning for Zion ranch. He's more of the little kids at that ranch. He was grooming them. He was most likely raping them, or at least some of them. It was so much that went on, and it's just disgusting. So I want to speak on the time that he got. I want to read a little bit of this article. This was in 2011. He was sentenced to life plus 20 years for sexually assaulting a 12-year-old girl and a 15-year-old girl, both of whom he had forcibly made his spiritual wives. What he was not charged with was polygamy, being married to more than one person at once, though at the time it was a felony in Utah. In fact, every state in America has laws against getting married while already being married to someone else, according to the Pew Research Center. He is still leading the FDLS. So I'm going to read this little section of Warren Jeffs now. Jeff is imprisoned at the Texas Department of Criminal Justice Lewis C. Polygamy Unit near Palestine, Texas. Jeff's earliest parole eligibility date is July 22nd, 2038. He shouldn't be able to even go up for parole, to be honest with you. In 2017, a woman sued Jeffs in a community trust belonging to the FLDS for damages alleging he had abused her when she was a child. 2 years later, Jeff's lawyer declared him unfit to give a deposition in the case because he had suffered a mental breakdown. They're saying that his mental state is not well. It says that he has attempted to end his own life. I'm guessing a lot of times. He tried to hang himself in jail in 2007 in Utah before his first conviction. He also fell ill during fast in 2009 and 2011 to save his life. In the later instance, doctors put Jeffs into a medically induced coma. In 2012, Jeff published a book titled Jesus Christ's Message to All Nations, in which he self-identified as a mouthpiece for God. Warns the world how they're treating him. Let all beware how they treat my servant Warren Jeffs and my priesthood and church, for I shall bring full power to recompense to every person what they have chosen. Community, the FLDS has lost hundreds of members and control of the Short Creek sister city since Jeffs went to prison. Those who remain have been convinced by Jeffs that he sits in a cell to atone for their sins. It says, we have evidence he continues to direct day-to-day operations of the church, including things like excommunicating individuals and directing what women should be placed with what caretakers. It's so sickening to me how people use religion and God to manipulate people to do what they want. It's sickening. And that's why a lot of people don't believe in God. I'm not talking about the religion part because it's all about relationship. But that's why people don't believe in God a lot of times, because of the things like this. People will use God to manipulate, to do sick and horrible things, and it's never okay. My whole point of making this is you just never know what someone is capable of doing and what someone is actually going through or have gone through. Thanks for watching. Make sure you like, comment, share, and subscribe.